Hello, I'm Gordon Schimmel with the Academy of Model Aeronautics. Welcome to our How Do I series for newcomers. Dave is a free flight modeler, but today he's going to show us something completely different. Welcome, Dave.
Well, thanks, Gordon. You know, this is a free flight glider that you can get at a toy store, very inexpensive. But with the addition of a radio control system, if you can set behind you all your engineering training and your aesthetic senses, you can make a Frankenstein sailplane out of these and have a lot of fun. And we're going to teach you how to do it with common household items, and it's a cinch. You know, these radio control systems have been developed a lot over the last few years, and there's some obsolete ones. They still work fine, but the newer ones are not subject to interference. You might find that you have one of these or got one at a garage sale, and you don't have an airplane to go with it. We can fix that. These airplanes are available at toy stores, and they're dirt cheap. And it is possible to convert this big toy glider to a radio-controlled sailplane.
Now this is foam, just a foam glider, is that right?
You better believe it. Oh yeah, simple and cheap. And you're going to use, of course, the usual things: packing tape, toothpicks, and thread.
Excellent.
Naturally. All right, so step number one. This plane glides just swell the way it is. And we need to keep the balance point the same. So what I'm going to do is measure the balance point. I got my finger underneath this thing. I need to know exactly where the center of gravity is. And it is right there. And I'm going to mark it, because as we work, we have to keep that same center of gravity so the plane will fly properly. Now the wings are just going to be in our way. Gordon, here, you can
Thanks.
make the wings.
Excellent.
All right, now we got the fuselage, and we're going to need control surfaces, so let's start with that. I'll get the radio out of the way for the moment. We'll come back to it later. All right, so this thing has a rudder and an elevator, but they don't move. And it's a pain in the neck to make them move, so we're going to cheat, use a dirty trick, and we're going to add additional material to be our control surfaces. And you can see it doesn't fit exactly. Don't worry about a thing. All right, so I'm going to mark, can't really see, I'll do this so the camera can see it. I'm going to mark my rudder. It's going to be about like that. And you're going to need a hobby knife or a razor blade. And I want you to be careful. This is sharper than anything you've dealt with before. If you're below a certain age, you want to get your mother's permission. Mom, do you mind if I use this razor blade? So you notice I wasn't very precise in my markings. You don't have to be very precise. Close enough is good enough. I'm using a sheet of balsa that I got at the local hobby shop, and that's the best material to use. It's pretty expensive because this balsa doesn't grow on trees. Oh wait, it does grow on trees. You can use cardboard or something else if you want, but nothing will be as light and as strong as balsa. So anything you substitute will take away that much performance. All right, back to our rudder, and now we need a hinge. So naturally, we go to packing tape. So I'm going to get a couple of pieces of packing tape about the size of the rudder. I'm going to put one on like that and fold it back. Gordon, you're going to hold that for me. Good man. I'm going to get the other one. We're going to use the tape as a hinge. Yet another case of using things that in a way they were not designed to be used.
So you stick it, you fold it and stick it to the rudder on both sides, and then you attach it to the fin on both sides.
That's it. And there you have your rudder with its hinge. Isn't that a dirty trick? Isn't that great? I love that. All right, now we're in trouble. We need an elevator added on, but this elevator has sweep back, and it doesn't work. All right, so it's time for another dirty trick. So we're going to take our balsa wood here, and we are going to thank you. We're going to draw that, and then we're going to cut it. And I'm going to cut a little corner out of that just to kind of equalize the area. This is the closest we'll get to actual aerodynamic design here. Take the bottom hinge. This time I'm doing it on the airplane first and then onto the wood. It doesn't matter. however you care to do it and however many hands you have. And I take my piece of wood and let her go, and you want it to have it just a little bit out from the wood, so it's got a little hinge effect there. And we're in business. Now, in order to get the controls to actually act on this, we need some sort of an attachment point for our pull string. So we've got toothpicks, and you've got to pop a hole in this control surface. And I'm going to use, again, high tech, a little piece of bamboo, or you could actually use a drill, if you really wanted to get fancy.
Or a paper clip straightened out.
Possibly.
That would do it.
All right, so there's our control surface anchor, and I'm going to put a little super glue on either side to hold it in place, because it's going to have a lot of force on it. You're going to be moving the whole control surface on that. And I use a little accelerator to get the glue to dry. If you're using white glue, you just got to sit and let it dry. And I'll hand you that. And now we're back to the rudder. We're going to do the same thing on the rudder. We get our little bamboo skewer. And on a serious RC model, these control surfaces would be measured and carefully arranged. And on this one, it's going to fly fine. We're not fooling anybody. So I'm just kind of guessing. I'm putting it about in the middle, and we're going to put our control pulls wherever it looks good, and it'll be fine. You're not going to do aerobatics with this model. You're just going to fly. Okay, so I put some glue on both sides of this toothpick, and it'll put up with an awful lot of strain. All right, now we got our radio. And it's got a battery pack, and it's got a receiver module, and then it's got 2 servos. And this is a pretty good one. These are real small servos. This will be good for this model. You can use bigger ones if you want, but lighter and smaller is better.
Now, where do you get servos? Where do you get all of this?
Probably you're going to find this around the house. Somebody else will have had a radio-controlled model plane that they wrecked and the radio's left. Or you'll get it at a garage sale. Or maybe you get it online or something. You'll have the transmitter and you'll have this thing, but you want to have an airplane to go with it. Well, the airplane's the hardest part. And you can spend hundreds of dollars getting a plane and a power system, and or you can spend $2. Mm-hmm. All right, so to mount this on here, it doesn't have to be inside the model. These things can stick out in the breeze. It's not going to hurt a thing. No one's going to be impressed one way or the other. So we're going to start by mounting these servos, and we're going to mount them on the back of the model. And I'm going to just do a rough little mark of how big those servos are on there. And then, back we go to our skewer. 1,000 household uses, Gordon, I'm telling you. There are fancy gadgets that can cut the foam using heated electrical wires and various other fancy ways of doing it. Or you can just poke a bunch of holes with your skewer and then take, again, your hobby knife or razor blade and kind of dig it around the edges a little bit. And then take a little pair of pliers, a needle nose plier, and just dig in and rip the foam out of there. And that's good enough for what we're going to do. Now, right now, you guys, there are serious model builders watching this video in horror at the terrifying, awful things we're doing here. And
the plane hasn't complained one bit.
no. And the fun we're going to have flying it won't be affected. But this is a really dirty trick. This is not how the serious people do it. Okay, so that's not going in quite far enough, so I'm going to dig a little more foam out of there, and in it goes. Now, back to the packing tape. So, and we cinch that down really good. One in front, one in back. You don't want to interfere with the wheels of it. You just want to hold it in so they don't move when we get to the next part. All right, I'm going to do the rudder first because it's handier. We have some regular old carpet thread. Any thread will do. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a step. Let me have that transmitter, sir. Again, this is a dirty trick. This is not how the pros do it. I installed these servos without knowing which servo is going to be which. So we turn the transmitter on, we turn the receiver on, and I'm going to work this thing and figure, here's my rudder control. So it turns out that the right-hand servo is going to be my rudder servo. And in order to turn right, I turn the thing right. Well, I'm watching this thing, and the one that's turning is this part of this arm pulling forward is right turn. And I'm even going to label it so I don't forget later. Right and left. And my elevator, when I want to dive and go forward, this side is moving, so that's down. And that's up. Up, down, left, right. Now we can turn this off. And instead of fancy schmancy control runs, we're going to use thread. And I'm going to take my right turn direction, and I run my thread through that.
So that has little holes in it that you can use.
There's little holes, or you can just wrap around the end and glue, but you want to be real careful and not get the glue down into the servo.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And I'm just going to tie a couple of knots in this. Tie it directly to the servo. Remember I talked about the serious modelers clutching their, now they're clutching their chest.
Mm-hmm.
This is not how it's done. Oh yeah, well here it is. I'm going to run this over to my toothpick. I'm going to wrap it around the toothpick a couple of times. I'm going to take a drop of glue. And there's one run. And of course I got to do 4 of these, so obviously the other one's going to be on the other half of the servo. This is not going to be precise. We're not going to be able to do, yes, thank you. We're not going to be able to do 8-point rolls with this aircraft. But we're going to be able to fly it around and control it and have an RC sailplane. And one of the best parts is if everything goes wrong and you crash the plane and it's destroyed, you go back down to the dime store and you get another one. All right. Back this goes to the other side.
I don't know if too many people know what a dime store is
A
these days.
dime store, yeah, it's what we used to have before there was a dollar store. Nowadays there's been inflation, it's a dollar store. These are commonly available at toy stores, sometimes at a grocery store. And they're not very expensive. And there's several different, slightly different designs of this kind of model. Gordon, let's test it. I'll let you be the pilot. Turn that thing on. And show me rudder movement. Not bad. You're a pretty good pilot.
So far, so good.
Okay, we're going to do the elevator the same way. Now that we've got it all hinged. Yeah, if you do that, I'm going to try and do this so it's more visible.
It's a little hard.
It is. And I can also, on this one, I can cut the 2 strings and not attach them to the control surface yet, now that we know which way everything's going. On a serious model, you would use custom-made control runs with wire inside tubing, and it's adjustable with little turnbuckles, and it's very precise. Yeah.
This is where we bring in some of your 70s music.
I'm cutting the extra length off here just so it doesn't snag, make trouble.
We want to double check and make sure which goes up and down.
You really want to double check and make sure, okay? Because you don't want the plane to be confused. I'm confused enough.
Yeah.
So notice I wrote up and down.
Right.
The up pull is going to pull the top of the elevator up to pull the plane up. So that's this line right here. And if in doubt, stop and turn the radio back on and make sure you got it right, because that could be embarrassing. All right, the final one is our down elevator. Now, when you tested the rudder, it was just a little bit loose. So we're going to adjust it just the tiniest bit using yet another dirty trick. I'm going to just take a little sliver of wood, just a little piece of leftover balsa, and I'm just going to wrap it around the wood, or around the thread, just a little bit like that, just to take up slack. Of course, you could always just retie it, but not me, because this allows us to have this ugly thing in our thread, and that's something right there. All right, control surfaces are in. We're ready for the next part.
Do you want to test the elevator?
You're just aching to do that, aren't you?
I am.
Go ahead. There it goes. See it moving? Now it's so huge, that elevator is so huge that that's enough. It'll steer the plane just fine. Okay? Ordinarily, a radio-controlled elevator would be very small. But because we're doing this in such a crude way, we use big surfaces. We don't want to fool around. All right. Now we're back to this balance point. Yeah, turn the radio off. All right, we're going to install the rest of this stuff, but the batteries are going to be the heaviest thing on this model. And where we put the batteries is critical. That's going to have to do with keeping the balance of the plane. And if we don't keep that same balance, it's not going to work. So I'm going to take my receiver module. You got this? Hold that up. Right. Good work.
Sure, I do now.
Once again, back to the packing tape. Solution to all problems in aero modeling. And I'm going to reverse this and try and get some of these wires taped down with this. Now here's the receiver wire, and this one has to be extended as best you can. So what we're going to do is run this along the bottom of the model. And another little piece of packing tape is going to hold it. And that's that. Okay, back with the wings. Now the wings are going to be in our way, but we have to have them in our way. And this time we put them in all the way. And after you fly this a little, these wings will get a little loose. And you'll probably have to put some packing tape on them to keep them tight. All right, so our balance point was right there. And we are, it's getting kind of nose heavy now from all that stuff we put on it. So when we put these batteries on, we got to put them so that it maintains that balance. And that's just about right. Just about right. And so I'm going to mark where the batteries are going to go. All right, now we've got a couple of options on the batteries. You can just strap them on like that and it'll be fine. You can strap them on the bottom, which is better, it keeps the center of gravity low, but every time the thing lands it's going to scrape the batteries and that's not so good. Or you can poke a hole into the fuselage and mount the batteries semi-internally. And that's what we're going to do here. So we're back to our magic skewer. And again, if you've got a foam cutter, this part gets way easier. You want to be careful when you do this and not cut down into the top of it because you'll hurt the structural features of the plane. If you weaken that fuselage, it'll snap in the middle when you have a hard landing. So I'm leaving foam up on top there. I just want a nice hole to stick the battery into so it'll ride with the plane. Yes?
Well, you're trying to keep the structure as much intact as possible.
That's
so
right, especially here in the middle of the fuselage where it's really going to have a load on it. And if you cut away too much of the wrong part, you're going to get into trouble. Yeah, this foam makes a mess. That's just kind of the way it is. I'm not even trying to be real neat. I'm just digging away so we can get that battery in there. Let's see how that's doing. Oh, we're looking good. All right. Okay. Batteries in, good enough. Gordon, we're done. We're ready for a test flight. Let me have those wings again. Wing in there. And we're going to take our switch and tape it somewhere where we can reach it.
And that's
easily.
the switch to turn the receiver on.
Yes, this turns the airborne system on and off. And see, it's got neat little holes. You can mount it very nicely in a piece of plywood, or you can just tape it to the top of the fuselage. What do we care? All right, switch on.
Switch on.
Raise your antenna on that. Switch on this side. All right, Gordon, this is your moment. You ready?
I'm ready.
You can fly this plane just in your front yard by tossing it. If you have any sort of a hill, you can get up to a slope, you can get a much longer flight out of it. You can also put a paper clip hook in the bottom and get a long piece of twine and tow it up like a kite. A tow line glider is what they call it. You can get really good altitude and then the line will slip off and you can fly it just like the serious modelers do. And these will actually fly well enough to thermal soar. And you will get the funniest looks at the field. It will be worth it.
Thanks for joining us. You can find other great activities and projects on this flight school website. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to contact us at modelaircraft.org. I'm Gordon Schimmel for the Academy of Model Aeronautics. Learn, grow, fly with us.